I just want to say a good afternoon to everybody. My name is Julie, and I'm one of the dementia care coach here at the Dementia Society. And today we're going to be talking about caregiver resiliency. And so I'm going to wait about, there's almost half of you coming in. So I'm going to wait one more minute before we get started, and then we're just going to go around some of the objectives for today, which is to understand the resiliency and recognize and help ourselves with some coping strategies. It's going to be for about an hour in length. And if you have any questions, you can use the chat button at the bottom of your screen. You're going to see a little bubble, and that's a chat button. If you have any questions, we're going to take it. I'm going to be able to go over some of those towards the end of the session. Can everybody see? If you cannot see the screen, just let me know. Good. So without further ado, so like I said, today we're going to try to, as our objectives, we're going to try to understand resiliency, to recognize and attend in response to the signs of stress, and find ways to increase self-awareness, self-care. And we're going to see the reason why it is so important as a caregiver to talk and discuss about self-care and have some tools in terms of resiliency. And so if you look at the caregiver's experience, and we're going to be talking here in terms of caregivers at large, and also caregivers who take care of people with dementia. So if you are a caregiver of somebody in your life, your normal hours per week of informal care, and that we're talking about friendly visiting, or we're talking about looking after the bills, budgeting, or helping with some chores. All of those equals to 17 hours provided to seniors. And if you are looking after someone who has actually dementia, it increases to 26 hours per week. And so we're not talking about your regular schedule, your family life, or anything like that. We're just talking about informal care, whether it's making appointments, providing transportation, or anything else to people with dementia. 45% of unpaid caregivers of seniors with dementia are more likely to experience distress. So that's almost half of it, more than caregivers of other seniors, which is about 26% of them. There's 1.6 times more caregivers of seniors with dementia that have a higher odds of reporting distress if the person receives care that displays verbal or physical aggression. So we know that with dementia, there's a whole behavior component that is added to the actual care. And so if you are caring for somebody who on top of that displays a lot of behavioral issues, you're even more likely to report that distress. And so if we're looking at the amount of out-of-pocket services, it cost $1.4 billion paid by the caregivers for people with dementia in 2016. And we know that those numbers are actually increasing by a lot. So as a caregiver, your life has now many layers of complexity. And to add to this list, there's an actual emotional component attached for caring for loved ones. And I have attended, what I like to say is that caregivers normally sit on a three-legged stool, and that's what I call it, the three-legged stool. Doesn't matter which order they are at, but the stools are anger, grief, and sadness. And so you're going to revert, you're going to go from one to the other, and then you're going to be angry because you're kind of losing your own freedom, or you're frustrated about the situation because there's just so much going on. And then you're going to feel guilty because you're feeling this way, because you know it's not the person's fault. And then you're going to be feeling sad as well because of everything else that's going on. So the anger, the grief, and the guilt are the three ones that we're standing on, which is increase the stress level as a caregiver. So caregiver resiliency and self-care becomes, I would say, mandatory and very important in your journey of caring, because it's usually caring for somebody who has dementia is a long-term process. So when we talk about resilience, resilience is the ability to adapt well to significant stress, threats, trauma, tragedies such as illness, family or work problems, financial concerns, dying of, or the death of someone close to you. So now, what I'd like to make the difference is in terms of stress. There's definitely four types of, there are different types of stress. And the first one I want to talk about is eustress. So eustress is the type of stress that you have whenever you get ready for a big game, or if you're really excited, you're planning a big trip or a secret party. So there's some stress involved with it, but that stress actually kind of motivates you. It gives you a drive. It gives you an extra energy, adrenaline, and you like it. Although it might be hard at times or it's stressful in the moment, there's an actual added value where that stress is positive in your life. The next stress that I'd like to talk about is distress. Distress is characterized by an overload. Okay, so that's when things are keeping you up at night, when you start thinking about things, when you feel like it's become a heavy weight to carry. So that energy that you felt in that eustress, now you're not feeling it so much, and you feel the weight. And very often, you might feel kind of overloaded or overwhelmed. So you're going to use coping strategies. So although you find the weight demanding, or you find the situation heavy, you find ways to cope. And some of those coping strategies may be very positive, like exercise, or like spending time and, writing, or so you found some ways. And some might not be as helpful, like alcohol or medication, or can be destructive. But in a way, you found ways to try to cope and keep yourself, I would say, level in that sense. Trauma is when actually something happens that is way beyond your capacity. And so you think of a fire in your house, or you think of a major accident or a major crisis. So when we talk about crisis, we talk about things where that way of coping now is no longer working. I like to think about it when I was a kid. I mean, that's many years ago. We used to have those merry-go-round where we would be running around and we'd jump in, and then we'd get completely dizzy, and we try to hold on as much as we could until somebody bigger and would run behind us and kind of expulse us from this, and then we'd get out of it and we'd be completely dizzy all over the place, sometimes nauseated. And so it would take a time before we found our footing again. So trauma or crisis is a place like this, where you're kind of disoriented, and there's a lot of physiological and emotional situations that are coming to it. And dysfunctional, so dysfunction in terms of stress is when you have absolutely no more capacity. So even with a trauma or with a crisis, eventually you will be going back to somewhat of a new normal. Whereas dysfunction is you're no longer capable of coping with any amount of stress. And why is this all important? Because when we talk about self-care, the quicker we are at finding ways, or at recognizing that stress in our lives, and at finding ways to we have a lot of tools in our tools bag. That's what we call resiliency, and so that is the ability to adapt. So resiliency allows you to face diversity and bounce back to your previous state, or even bounce forward in incorporating new experience, growing, and being better positioned for positive outcome in the future. So how do you know you're stressed? Well, my kids who were little could tell whenever mommy was not very happy, because they were saying, I can see it in her eyes. So she had those mama look eyes. And so there's some physiological aspect that can come to knowing that you're stressed, or there's some emotional aspect to it. So personally, when I know that I have a lot of stress, I end up having this great pressure in this bar in my back. So it goes from my neck to my shoulders. Some people might have big headaches, or you might feel a little bit more impatient, or cry a little more, be easier to cry. And so those are all ways or signs that you can recognize and say, okay, whoa, wait a minute. Normally a situation like this doesn't faze me, but right now I feel like I'm snapping quicker. I have less patience with my children. I feel like I have a harder time sleeping. I don't eat very well. So you can recognize some of those signs. So when you recognize those signs, you say, okay, now it's time to think about self-care. But if I were to ask you, what does self-care mean to you? And how would you know, or what does that word resound? Some of you might say, well, self-care is one more thing that I have to add on my plate, and I don't have time to add things on my plate. People may relate it, and depending on your culture, depending on your age, depending on, if I just think about when I was a kid, I mean, self-care wasn't something that we were talking about. It came very popular more in the 1980s, 1990s. So again, depending on your culture, it might be something that you're like, well, no, because it's my role to care about everybody else. So thinking about self-care is kind of viewed as selfish, or it's part of your identity to look after other people. And so self-care is actually, the way we like to think about it is, if you're on a plane and we tell you that there's a situation going on, the one thing that you have to do is put on your oxygen mask first before you put somebody else's oxygen mask. If not, none of you are good. I mean, both of you will end up not having the care that you need. And so self-care is the ability to be able to give yourself the energy or the gas that you need in order to provide, in the long run, the care for other people. And so there are different domains that we can look into self-care. And so there's spiritual domain, emotional domain, physical domain, psychological, and social. And we're going to be spending a little bit of time on each one of those. So emotional self-care. It's the ability to give yourself permission to feel your feelings, to not judge them, to notice how your emotions connect to your body. What do you feel in your body when you're frustrated and happy and sad and excited and anxious? And so again, it's coming back to those, I know that I'm stressed because now all of a sudden I'm more snappy, it's being able to make the link between the emotions that I'm going through with the situation that I'm living now, and how does it affect me, the impact that it has on me. So whether it's positive or negative, and giving yourself the ability to go through those emotions. So some people don't want to cry, or some people feel like they shouldn't be angry. They don't have the right to be angry. Just so you know that there's no such thing as unexpressed emotion. So every emotion that you have a tendency to keep inside and bottle up will come back some way or another at one point in your life. And so being able to accept them, recognize them, knowing that it is part of the natural, it's part of your makeup, it's part of how you're made and how you were created. Those emotions are there for a purpose. And when you accept them and you express them in a positive way, or when you express them in a healthy way, it can be very useful, because they're like your signs on the road, right? Spiritual self-care. What brings you a sense of internal peace? Do you feel calm and fulfilled when you are in nature, at a religious ceremony, relaxing, nourishing your body with food, setting good boundaries, knowing when to say yes and no, feeling gratitude or enjoying physical touch, reading? So it's anything that basically nurtures your spirit and your soul. And so some people really like the outdoors. For them, that's a time, it's a getaway, or taking a walk in the morning just by the park. Some it's petting their animals. It's what we call zoo therapy, right? Petting your dog or your cat, or spending some time. It's anything that brings you enjoyment and just brings you back a sense of balance. But a big part of it has to do as well with knowing how to let go, knowing how to have peace and understanding that you don't have control over a lot of things. So there's only a few things we control in life, the rest we don't. And when we don't is the ability to say, well, you know what, this is out of my zone and it's out of my control. And then being able to just, like I said, let go. And so that is very important. Psychological self-care. So caregiving can be very challenging. The many demands place you can lead to stress and sometimes distress. Learn to recognize the signs of burnout so you respond immediately. Speak to yourself kindly and compassionately. Try to treat yourself the same way you would treat a beloved friend. And we find that when it comes to caregiving, people who actually care, especially with people with dementia, who will have a lot of memory issues, will have a hard time repeating often. And so caregivers will come impatient at one time and they'll just say, now eventually I snap and then I feel completely guilty about it. And so being kind of to yourself, knowing that you're not perfect. You are allowed to make mistakes. Nobody is expecting you to be perfect. And so not be so harsh on yourself. Also to recognize that whenever you have you're getting all of these things and you feel like it's out of control, take a time out. Just say, now I have to take a time out. I have to stop. I have to think about how I can actually refresh and take another look at this situation in a different way. Social self-care. So the life of a caregiver can become very narrow and your social network can be dwindle away. It's important to ask for help from friends, family, and neighbors and others. So, and what we see often is that caregivers, especially with people who care for people who have dementia, will have a tendency to say, well, I'm not going to be asking anybody, and they try to keep it to themselves. They try to do it all. And social self-care is also being able to say, let's have a support network. Let's connect with other people who can help me share this load. Let's being able to give me some me time as well. Because when you care for a person that has dementia, then everybody else is involved in it, right? So you have one person who has dementia, you have all the people that it affects. And very often when you're looking to this one person, you have a tendency to forget yourself. And so that social self-care is giving yourself the time to say, okay, I need to still be me. I need to be able to connect with other people. And so that's very important. Asking for help doesn't make you selfish or incapable. It just means that you're realistic. There's only so much that you can do on your own. When we talk about physical self-care, and that's one that people say, oh, I don't want to add one more thing to my list. Well, looking after your physical well-being will affect your mood and health. So which one or what can you do to affect? And when we talk about physical self-care, we can talk about, yes, most people will say going to the gym or being physically fit, but it also includes eating healthy. What can I add in my today's schedule? One more fruit or one extra vegetables or something that will help me have more of a balanced health, more of a balance of eating habits. When it comes to water, drinking a lot of water is important. And a lot of caregivers have a tendency to even forget about water. They just completely forget that they have to drink, or they don't drink as much. And normally by the time your body tells you that you're thirsty, that's because you're already starting to be dehydrated. So keeping a water bottle like this or whatever by your side and just having it at eyesight so that you can remember to drink is an important thing. Getting adequate sleep. Sleep is very, very important, especially when we talk about dementia prevention, when we talk about the risk factors or the ability or what you can do to help yourself. sleeping, having an adequate amount of sleep is an actual good asset for prevention. So we know that it says about 7 hours. It's not necessarily the amount of hours, but also the quality of sleep that is very important. Moving your bodies in ways that make you feel good. So whether it's just a walk, or, you know, parking your car a little bit further, or sitting in your chair and doing exercising in your chair. Find time to stretch and breathe. And I would like to show you one of the activities that I have here that I keep actually handy on my desk often. And one of them is this bottle here. So this bottle is filled with oil and with a lot of sparkles. And as you can see right now, I can see completely clearly. And that probably is what I look like in the morning when, you know, on a Saturday morning when I don't have much. But most of the time, this is what my mind might look like. Completely, you know, opaque, fuzzy, everything is just all over the place. I have a hard time making sense. And when I shake this bottle and I just look at it, because it sparkles and it shines, and I take the time to stop, it reminds me that I need to stop, because if I don't stop, my brain is going to keep on going, and it's going to keep on being cloudy like this. And so just stopping and taking the time to see the sparkles go down, it takes about 5 minutes actually, and you'd be surprised how long 5 minutes looks like whenever you're waiting for something or whenever you're trying to calm down. But at the end of it, when I look and I say, okay, now that's clear, I can think about again. And that is a very good tool for me. Another one that I have that helps me, and I mean, reminders are very good and they're very important, is this one here. And this is just to remind me to keep a balanced life, because if I do too much of one thing, it's not going to be working. So having a balanced life is something that is of importance. If not, again, things become cloudy and then you don't know what is what. This one here is made with, if you ever wanted to do this very complicated chemistry bottle, it's actually, this one is 100% baby oil with sparkle, and this one is 50% water, 50% baby oil and sparkles. And any bottle will do. So yes, that's a little trick that helps me remember to stay grounded and to stay focused, because it's so easy to forget from time to time. And so take mini breaks, take rest, take baths, step outside into the sunlight and fresh air. If you have an area in your house that you like, that you can just sit in and just breathe, say, I'm going to take 5 minutes, I'm going to be there. That would be an important thing to do. So from the list of what we have seen so far, or some of the examples that I've given you, and again, what I want to come to the point of is that self-care doesn't have to be something that is added to your list, okay? Because the last thing as a caregiver, we saw 26 hours, 17 to 26 hours of caregiving that you do on top of everything else. So it's just, how can I tweak some things, or how can I incorporate things that it won't be too hard for me to do, but yet will make a big difference in me to stay grounded and stay focused and help me in that stress. And so I've shown you two of my bottles that I use. I also have, and I'm going to give you a few tricks here. We've talked about taking a bath. We've talked about making sure that we drink. We've talked about spending time with family and friends, or getting some help in order to increase our support network. We've talked about, you know, learning to let go and accepting some of those feelings. So we've described a few ways that we can actually make sure that we do some good self-care. Another one that I can do that is very hands-on is, this is a hand cream tube, and this one has a smell to it. And the reason why it has this smell, or the reason why I chose this one, is because that smell just helps me. It's lavender, and that lavender is really relaxing for me. It's actually green tea and lavender. And so when I put this in my hands, the palm of your hand, the inside here, is is very good actually for even for people who have dementia. That's a very good sensory area, and it's actually a pressure point. So it helps for affection, for calming people down. So people who, whenever you're stressed, you know, they can play with things. They fidget. We have a tendency to maybe take a stress ball, or I have a paper clip if I'm giving a presentation, but whenever I want to calm down, I just put some hand cream in my hands, and with that smell, and it just helps me. And I'll be putting my thumb in the middle of my palm, and I'm just going to be rubbing it right there, because that again helps with alleviating some of that stress. It's a calming reflex. And if you have people who, if you're caring for somebody who has dementia, and they have chances are that they may really like if they're more agitated, or you find that in terms of emotional, they get agitated or they get anxious, holding on their hands and just rubbing it is a good strategy to help them calm down and again come back into that moment. And so one of the things that I would like to do right now is for you to take a couple of minutes after I'm going to show you 2 more things, and just write down the list of things that you might have not realized that you were doing, but that you're doing already. One last, like I said, the 2 other things that I want to do is keeping a journal. Writing down your emotions, writing down your feelings is actually an important part. Not only does it let it out and put it, but sometimes it can help you put things into perspective, or you can look at it in a week's time from now and see the growth, or see where things are evaluating. So see the evolution, or how things are going, and not be afraid to have a good cry. Tears are okay. It's definitely okay to cry. And so based on those things that I've said, what I'd like you to do right now is I'd like to take a good 2 minutes that you can actually write down some of those things that you're doing very well, or that you say, yeah, I didn't realize that I could do that, or yes, this is easy for me to incorporate in my schedule. And and then add maybe 2 things that you haven't done yet, that you say, you know what, I think that I would like to try this. And I would challenge you, not that I'm going to see you again next week to ask, but I would definitely challenge you to incorporate it in your schedule and see if it does make a difference. So I'll give you 2 minutes right now. Now, believe it or not, I haven't forgotten you. It's been only 1.5 minutes. So can you imagine how 2 minutes can look sometimes? Yet taking 2 minutes out of your day just to breathe in and breathe out, just 2 can make a difference. And so what I'd like you to do right now is give yourself a good pat on the back. Take your hands and give yourself a good pat on the back for trying to at least think of 2 more things to put, and realizing that you are doing things, and that taking care of yourself is good. and you've decided to come into that workshop today, that webinar today, that's a good sign that you definitely want to increase that self-awareness. And so congratulate yourself for that. And so one of the things that I want to talk to you right now about is also what we can do here in order to help you in that journey and to help you in terms of self-care. And so when we talked about social self-care and we've talked about connecting with other people, know that here at the Dementia Society, there are people like me, dementia care coaches, who are actually available to help you alleviate some of that stress related to caregiving. And how do we do that? We do that actually in kind of 4 ways. The first thing that we can do is to educate you on the matter, because if you feel like you know what's happening, you know what's going to come, and you feel like you prepare yourself, so you help in the prevention instead of the reaction, you feel more equipped. So it's not as stressful because you're like, okay, I kind of know which next step I'm going to have to take. And so we have educational sessions that are related to the topics of dementia. We also have some social programs that can help you and your loved one go to activities together in order to connect with the community and exchange with other people. We have some support groups, and those support groups are a place where it's safe for you to really share those emotions that we've talked about at the beginning. And they're also a safe space for that, but it's also a great networking and a great place, a resource of a wealth of information about other caregivers who say, oh yes, I've been going through this, I'm having some issues myself, I've tried this worked very well, or so. It's a lot of resources and a lot of support that you get that way. And the other thing that we also do is the one-on-one support. So you can call a dementia care coach, somebody like myself, who would connect with you and just chat and let you basically support you in those emotions, but also give you some tricks maybe, or suggesting you some strategies that might help you that are completely individualized to your needs, and help you also connect to the other services that are in the area in terms of other people that could help you share that load. And so we can also do an advocacy part with, if you're looking for some support and you feel like I'll give you an example, the local health and integrated network. If you're connected with them and you say, well, you know what, Julia, this is very difficult right now and I feel like I'm not getting what I need, we can be part of that advocacy person to help you bridge the gap between the different partners that we have in the area. But most of all, we want to make sure that you know that you're not alone. You're not alone in that. And just knowing that there are people there who can actually get what you're going through and help you, support you on that journey, we hope that will help you alleviate some of that stress. And so if you have any questions, or you're not connected with us, or you would like to be connected with us, this is the phone number. So it's 613-523-4004. And this is our email address. And you can also visit our website. We have lots of information on our website. We have webinars like this. We have different fact sheets on information. So it's a good resource to have. And again, we want to make sure that you remember how important it is to care for yourself. So having that self-care, although life can be so challenging, sometimes it's just to stop and remember to breathe, to take a time out, so that you can actually do that in the long run. And so what we want is that you don't become a sprinter, but a marathoner, right? Going and working for a marathon is endurance, it's strength, and whereas if you're just going for a sprint, it's everything all at once and you're giving it all. And a lot of caregivers are actually having this, I need to do it all, I need to care for it all, or I don't know that there's other people that can help me carry it, and so I feel that burden, I'm the only one. And so what we're telling you in this is no, there's tons of things along the way that can help you, and so that you can be as efficient in that you can enjoy the time in that journey, that there's good moments and to enjoy those moments. And so we also say take it one day at a time. I personally say take it 5 minutes at a time, because there's some good 5 minutes and some bad 5 minutes in a day. And so just taking it in small blocks may make a difference. So if you have any questions or anything that you would like to share, you can, I'm going to leave it open for 5 minutes that you can send me chats through, there's a chat button at the bottom of your screen. So if you want to send me a question there, I can answer. And if not,
Julie, I'm good.
you're good. Perfect.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I want to thank you so very much for participating today. And if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to contact us. And if you wanted to have more information on caregiver resiliency, let us know as well. Okay. So you take care. Have a good day.